Welcome, everyone, to what I have dubbed the road to ISTE. One of the things about ISTE, if you've never been, is that it is busy. And as a company, we can't fit everyone in the booth at the same time, uh, just because it is too big and too much going on. And I said, no, I want to make sure that we get a chance to bring these amazing educators to all of you in one way or the other. So I said, oh, there's technically 5 Tuesdays in June. This is great. So we could do 4 Tuesdays before the week of ISTE, and I can add some of the most amazing educators that I know to sort of speak and share because there's never enough time. And so, for those of you who can't come to ISTE, you're going to see 4 weeks worth of ISTE speakers sharing specifically about AI and school AI and learning and growth and all of the amazing things that would normally cost you a fortune to go and fly to ISTE or do the ISTE online. So we are going to give you those sessions for free and have those conversations right here. And I'm really excited in my position. For those of you who are new, my name is Nick Provenzano. I am the newly dubbed Senior Manager, Champions and Advocate Program. What does that mean? That means that it's a lot fancier of a title that gives me the opportunity to work more closely with some of the biggest voices in EdTech, and Rachelle is one of those giant voices to have here as part of this. Rachelle, you and I have known each other over a decade at
I
least. I
know.
mean,
Yeah.
like
Long time.
15 years, long time. So I'm really excited as part of this at SchoolAI. One of the things we talk about, and this is no joke, literally every all hands meeting, we talk about this. We talked about it today again. We make school awesome for students and the people who support them by finding out what they need and making it happen. And it's really one of the things when I interviewed with our CEO, Caleb, and he talked to me about the mission, and it's something that's held true every step of the way. And I couldn't be any more excited about all the different adventures I've gone on and the ones to come that all focus on helping teachers make school awesome for students, which is what I love doing as a classroom teacher myself. I spent over 20 years, for those of you who don't know, high school English teacher and then a makerspace director, doing tons and tons of things. It's so powerful to be able to make those connections. And despite my head vanishing from my hat up, thanks to Zoom, I do have a head. Um, One of the things that for our champions in the community that are here to earn your points, here is the code word. It is highway. Uh, Feel free to write that down or access it later. For those of you not in our champions program, the champions program is our sort of exclusive group of educators that are passionate about AI. They love school AI and they want to get early access to things, be sounding boards to product teams to give us like ideas of how we can make the product better. We've got champions that are in the chat right now, so if they want to give a little shout out to how things work in the champions community, you can do that. We will be launching the champions community and relaunching, excuse me. We just updated our whole website. If you haven't seen it, check it out. And one of those is our champions pages, which will be updated shortly, and we'll be able to have more people join the community. So stay tuned if that's something that you want to do. We're going to dive in and clear that out. Stop sharing. There we go. Let's do that. There we go. I got it. Boom, 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 boom. Stop sharing. Oh, it's the Zooms. There we go. Also, hopefully it's just us talking now, and we can go from there. So we have a series of questions. These are meant to be conversations to really give people the opportunity, like Rachelle, and then some of you, if you have questions into the chat, to really just share about sort of their journey, what ISTE looks like to them, and sort of give us a bit of information regarding the message that they're sharing when they attend ISTE. So this will be a back and forth. Thankfully, more from Rachelle than for me. uh, Heard me enough already, and we're just going to learn together. And I want you to feel comfortable dropping in questions in the chat. And if people are just here to learn, I have a whole series of questions that we're going to go through that'll cover a lot of these things. But definitely feel comfortable dropping that into the chat if you have a question. So I'm going to dive right in, Rachelle. And based on me knowing you for as long as I have and the work that you've been doing, you've actually been exploring AI in education since 2017, well before it became a mainstream conversation and before people started dubbing themselves AI experts in the past year or two.
Um,
What was the moment that made you realize AI was going to fundamentally change teaching and learning?
Yeah, when you say the year and I think about it, I'm like, oh my goodness, like where did that time go? And I will say, just for anybody that's curious about like what made you get started with it, it was to write an article. It was a topic. I had been writing articles about things I was doing in my classroom, and that was easy. Like, oh, I did game-based learning. Oh, I did station rotation, even though I didn't know exactly what I was doing because I just kind of dove into it and then figured it out along the way. But so I got that interest in it, and it took a little bit of time with my students because primarily it was in my STEAM course, but I also had the great idea to submit a proposal to ISTE. Like, oh, if it's accepted, I'll have plenty of time to get that session ready. And of course, you know how things go. Like next, it's like here we are now, a couple of weeks away from the conference, and I'm like, oh, I have to get this ready. But there were some different opportunities where students were asking questions about like, well, could we use AI for this? Like one thing that I did in my Spanish classes and also my STEAM course was project-based learning. And we looked at the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals and talk about these global challenges. And we're trying to think big and dream big about like, okay, so we see that there is whichever one of the 17 my students chose. Here's this issue and challenge. Could AI be used to kind of solve or present some type of a solution to help with that challenge? So that was one of the things that came to me. And then the other part was it's actually kind of funny. This goes back probably to 2019, I would say, I guess, probably early 2019. There was a platform that had come out. It was one of the early platforms pre-ChatGPT and everything. And I always had my STEAM students like beta testing different whatever I would come in. I would go to a conference, I come back to be like, okay, now what are we going to learn? What are we going to try? And I'm like, this is fun, right? This is fun because it's learning. I get to learn from you. You get to try something different. And so for me, the first thing was there was a platform that was at its very early stages, and it had, I think it was like third and fifth grade math. It had like third and fifth grade and eighth grade, maybe reading, and it was very limited. So in my STEAM course, I enrolled them in like the fifth grade math course. And I will say they were not very happy with the fact that they were in eighth grade doing, it's like the are you smarter than a fifth grader kind of thing. But what I noticed was that within that platform at the time, and again, this is before all of the things we have like SchoolAI available to us, the students, I had all four that were sitting at this one like computer bank start on the exact same activity and lesson. And it adapted with them based on how quickly they responded, whether they were right or wrong. It noticed patterns in what they were getting correct and incorrect. And so that really stood out to me because that was a way I was like, oh my goodness, this is really personalizing and adapting in real time to what they need. And so being able to see, that advancement where they could get that quick glimpse. For me as the teacher, I could see where they were and I could make that pivot. Although it was kind of funny because some of my students who were a little bit more, advanced in some of the coding skills decided that they didn't really like the layout of that page. And once they were done with the math, they went into the coding of the page and like hypothetically speaking, if there was like, a horse race and the horse is going and it gets to the end point, they coded the horse to kind of go off the page and everything. So, but it was like those experiences where kids could think about like using it for good. For us as educators, I mean, we've always been able to personalize learning, but to be able to do something really quickly to give us that insight that then we can pivot, then we have some time, then we can work with those students one-on-one or as a whole class group. But those were some of the initial changes again before no end of November 2022 when boom, okay. Everything gets real right then.
Yeah, I mean the journey is always so surprising when you're in it, and then very surprising afterwards when you go, wait, I just did what? Or how did I end up here? When, like you said, it started off as a simple article, right? Like my very first blog post for the nerdyteacher.com was, I'm starting this blog for my master's degree in EdTech. I wonder where this will go.
Right.
And it's literally taking me all over the world. And now here I am managing a community and running webinars and things like that. Uh, it is wild and it's fun. And I think you make wonderful points because sometimes it's just getting our kids in front of things,
Mhm.
right? And seeing where they go and being along for the ride. And as a teacher, being okay with that, right?
Right.
Being okay with not knowing and letting your kids sort of explore and go. So I think that's spot on. You know, something I've always wondered, and I guess I've never really specifically asked you, but I would love
Yeah.
to hear this. You wear a lot of hats, like a lot of educators, right? Educator,
Yeah.
consultant, author, speaker, but attorney. How does your legal background shape the way you think about AI in K-12 specifically? Because I think with all the things that you're doing, sometimes that get lost. It's lost is that you are an attorney. Like, how does that work when you think about K-12 and AI with everything going on in the world?
Yeah, well, it's interesting because a lot of people that I've spoken to are first, initially, they're surprised that we all wear a lot of hats. That's one of my first things that when I have a podcast, I ask people like, what's your story? How'd you get here? And you hear about all these different things people have done along the way. But I'm a longtime educator and I think I was teaching full time for 5 years, been in Pittsburgh, one of the schools, one of the two law schools has an evening program. So I was living in the schools like students think that educators do. It was a 4 year, 4 night a week, and hard to believe that now this month officially I'm 4 days shy of the 20 years from graduation, and almost 20 years of taking the bar exam. But I said that had it not been for that experience, I would not still be in education because it changed me for so many reasons. Like I got to go back into the position of a student to experience that struggle, to see the value of relationships, to see how important it is to be a mentor. There were so many other things involved in that. And then with, flash forward to all the different work with that back in 2017 with writing the article, presenting on it, ChatGPT, I had done some articles on that as well. But in January of 2024, that's when I was getting the text messages, the phone calls, the emails, and knocking at the door, you name it, about like, should we ban ChatGPT? Should we, all of those things. And you've heard them too, and everybody joining in here is either been asked about it, thought it, or both. And I kept saying, like, no, like we are educators. We are in the best position to help students understand it. And to do that, we have to understand it ourselves. And so I continued doing those sessions, but then it probably took me about maybe 6 or 7 months. And I realized I'm like, you know what, there are bigger issues here that we need to be really aware of beyond the cheating. Because back when I was in high school, which was like forever ago, people could cheat. You've always been able to cheat. You've always been able to get around doing the work yourself. Even in the world of work, you can get around doing the work by yourself. So I brought that lens in. And for me, it's like, nice being able to pull all these different things together. And so I started to think about, the different risks that are involved when it comes to AI. It's not, there's all these tools, just like we go back to 2020, where we're trying to keep learning going. And it's like, oh, all things are free. Let me try this. But now thinking about AI, the legal background, the legal part of me, I think about things like, privacy. A lot of conversations about copyright, but even more important is like the ethical considerations. I was talking about bias, what is happening with student data, the accessibility to the different tools. Academic integrity, of course, is still involved in all these conversations. And so I started to think like, okay, yes, the kids can cheat, so academic integrity, but what are the other like not so great things? Because we know AI can generate a lot of really fun things, and I've seen a lot of people posting like the more recent, like the sketches of everybody, and it's continuing to improve. But there are also a lot of really scary, not great things that are happening. And my doctoral work, which I finished 2 years ago, it was focused on the need for professional development specific to AI. And I think about, we as educators need to understand the type of information to put in, how to use the different tools, and to have that guidance. And we need to provide that guidance for students. And so that's when I started to kind of pivot. I still do like the AI when I work with schools or present at conferences, which I love to do because I'm always learning in those sessions as well. But I looked at it through that legal lens. And so I dove into again, oh, I got 7 months to get this session ready. And then, oh, okay, so I'm doing this in a couple of weeks. But reading, I love to read the legalese and getting, helping educators to understand, what to look for, working with schools to see, how are we bringing this in? And do we have a policy in place? And in some of the sessions that I've done, I've had some people express to me that they struggle with even the word policy, which I get because policy takes a long time to develop. But then once you get that policy developed, especially when it comes to AI, it's like, is it outdated? So I try to, bring it all together and say, okay, you need to have some type of guidelines, a common language that's communicated with, everybody in the school community from home to school. And so knowing what I know about how the tech works, understanding the legalese and knowing what to look for, and then using that to guide my students and other educators is something that I've been really passionate about. So for me, it's like, I don't know, it's fun. It's fun learning. It's a lot to keep up with, but it challenges me, and it's something like, we always want to keep improving ourselves and just keep learning. You don't want to be stagnant in your growth. And so for me, it's just like, what else can I do that's going to benefit other educators as well as myself to make a difference? So I like to do all the things.
Well, and I think all of our experiences, right, whether it is through getting a doctorate, taking the bar, right, like these are all experiences that you have that influence you as an educator. And I think all of us have a wide variety of experiences, right, and how we choose to interact with different tools, right? Like that's based on our experiences, whether they're positive or negative. Like the amount of teachers that had negative experiences with technology early in their career sometimes are like, oh, I'm not doing this thing because of that one time, right? And so I think that makes the most sense. But I'd love to know what made you sort of dive into School AI, knowing everything that you know and all of the research that you've done. What made School AI a choice for you to use with your students and for yourself?
Yeah, I love that question because I goes back, oh my goodness, like trying to keep track of the number of years that I've been using it. And it made a difference because whenever, as a language educator, primarily, I should say, well, yeah, primarily, but I do other things too. But with students in any class, there is that fear of making mistakes. There's the fear of talking in front of others, the lack of confidence, all of those different things. And so for my students, when I first started to use it, it was, not just something just for teachers, just for students. Like there were a lot of options available. And for me, the very first, use I had for it was to create a space where students would be able to, and I could see what they were saying in the chat, uh, to interact with a chatbot, to have a conversation, to build those skills, for me to be able to identify where I could support them better. I could see where they were struggling, I could see where they're advancing, but also and, it all comes down to the prompting, right? So whatever you tell it, like, make sure the students only speak in Spanish or make sure they only say on topic or any of those things. And then you try to break the system because, the kids are going to try to like get around it somehow. But it has been over 2 years now. I had actually written an article where I had some students who were the ones that would raise, they wouldn't raise their hand. If I called on them, they would say, call on somebody else. I'm going to get it wrong. And I'm like, it's okay. That's how you learn. And then I wrote this article about AI literacy. And I think it ended up coming out in like April of 2024. It takes a little bit of time until it eventually comes out. But I had some call out quotes from students who were the ones that did not want to speak at all. And I saw them improving that they felt that comfort in that space where, like they were getting guidance from me because I could see what they were writing, but also within the platform itself. And then they were excited to share about that. And then the next step was, okay, now I feel comfortable because I'm getting the answers correctly. I'm responding correctly. I see where I need to work on, or I see what I need to work on. And then they start to raise their hands and they start to interact in the classroom and they started to help their classmates. And that was huge for students to be able to do that. And often, and I know there's some other language educators in here, but often there are, you're introduced to a platform in a school or there's professional development provided. And when you fall into those electives sometimes, or you're as a world language educator, sometimes, and even math teachers, I hear this a lot too. It's like, well, I don't see how this can work for me. Like, how can I bring this in my classroom? And it was just so simple to get started. And then as it grew, even more recently when I've shared it at sessions and used it in my own classroom and with other students, just seeing all of the options that are available and seeing what others have created that make it so easy for others who are like, I always joke, I'm like, how many of you go home at the end of the day and you're just so bored? You have like nothing to do. And you're like, no one? Okay. It's like one more thing, but it makes it so easy to get started. And so for me, School AI, helps me to see like what practice they need, things that I need to repeat, uh, how they respond to the prompting, but it's also placing AI in their hands. And so we know that they need to develop those AI literacy skills. I always talk about the World Economic Forum, and like in 2027, AI was number 3. For 2030, the projection is AI skills are number 1. So the fact that students are in a safe space, no pun intended. Uh, there's options for teachers. You put it in the student hands as well. Teachers have the control over what the students are experiencing. You can design the different spaces and change all the different things up, but you also have those insights that enable you to be more responsive, make learning more interactive for students. And I think it's exciting no matter what grade level you're teaching. I've been fortunate to visit some classrooms um, out in Utah who are using, School AI. And it's the kids, even the youngest levels, because they can speak to it, so they don't have to worry about typing. And so when you're looking at things like accessibility, like it involves all of these different things that are really great for teachers. That if you're thinking about like, well, I have to think about, and you name 5 different areas you have to think about, you can do all of those things in this one. I'll say it again, space, not necessarily a space, but you know what I mean.
I think you touched on a couple of things that are near and dear to me. One, really what you're talking about is accessibility for those students, right? Those students that feel now that they have a voice,
Mhm.
whether digitally or all of a sudden they've answered in the space and they go, oh, my answer's good or it's correct. And I feel confident now to raise my hand and share out. It's like, right, like back of the day when I was running back channels in class
Oh
and,
yeah.
remember though, like giving a digital way for kids to participate that I could monitor while running the class. And excuse me, what I would do is I would identify those kids that were normally quiet
Mhm.
who had the correct answer, and I go, "Oh, Bill, yes, explain that a little bit more. That's an awesome answer."
Mhm.
Because that validation is sometimes what they need to get them over that little speed bump to participate because of different anxieties or fears and just normal kid stuff. Like we forget that speaking in front of even 30 peers is tough. Like how many times have any of us been in a staff meeting and you're like, I'm not saying anything. That's not happening, right? Like we all have those moments, and I think it's those are human moments, and we want our kids to do better. And so I love how you talked about how one, spaces give those students voices to participate, but two, it also gives you the information as a teacher with the dashboard to see who needs the extra levels of support that
Mhm.
I might not see because I have all of the students in class speaking at the same time.
Right.
And so that ability, it actually is empowering you and
Mhm.
empowering students, which is the opposite of what this next question is, which is the fear, right, that teachers are going to be replaced. You've talked about AI as a tool to enhance teaching rather than replace teachers.
Mhm.
How and how it can help lighten teachers' loads. What does that look like, particularly for a traditional teacher? Basically, you've been traveling and visiting all of these classrooms all across the country, right?
Mhm.
Like, what does it look like in practice when we talk about enhancing students, enhancing teachers, and not replacing what teachers are doing day to day? What does that look like from what you've seen in your travels?
Yeah, so that has been the big question even years ago, probably. I was at the TCEA conference, and that probably goes back 7 years ago, I think. And I had done a few sessions on AI, and I went to Lori Gracie had a session, and there was there was a website that she talked about. It's like, will robots take my job? And so you type in, all of these things, and I use that with my students in my STEAM class. And of course, number one thing they ask, they're like teachers, and high percentage, like we're safe because we have that human component that we need, the relationships. And so it's kind of funny, but I do get that question a lot. And there's a lot of research out there, a lot of percentages about what will and what will not be replaced. And a lot of the things, things that are easy to automate, clerical tasks, things like that. But we know in the work that we do, some things like lesson planning, creating assessments, coming up with ideas, and even finding time to talk to somebody, one of your colleagues. You might be in a smaller school, which I was, and there were times where people that were downstairs are like, "Oh, you're still here?" Because you don't see them for a couple of weeks. And so there is that fear that it's going to take over. But like I always say, whenever I do sessions, and even just in conversations like we're having now, is like I say, think about the things. Sometimes I laugh at it too. It's like, okay, what takes up most of your time? Or what is something that you have taught that you're just like, oh no, it's that thing again, I have to teach. Or you've taught something so many different times in so many different ways, and it's still not clicking. So lifting those, that extra time that you are spending on those things, removing that and having, like a thought partner, like everybody, calls it, or whatever your name is for your, AI, and the enhancement piece of it. It's whether it's for students or for educators, it's like, if I have a group of students that I know I have some, here's a great example in my own experience. I have students that want to work independently, don't want to use technology. I have students that want to make something with like a video, a podcast. Some students want to draw, they want to use a presentation tool. And so I like to leave it open-ended. For many years, I was like, hey, here's 4 ideas. Number 5 was, if you have an idea that's better than mine, let me know. Let's talk about it or something. And they often would. But now I'll use it to brainstorm. Like, I have students that appreciate or like doing, like I just said to you, what are some unique ideas for them? So that's one way for me, creating some different assessments, reading passages. I'll create songs, a lot of different things, but having extra time that I can then go back and work with the students. And it's not, I mean, it's helping me to do the work, but my real work is actually working with the students, talking with them, providing that instruction to them, and building relationships. And for students, guiding them to see how, maybe they're using some AI, they're looking something up on Google, wherever, and they get some answers, but the language isn't clear. And so they need that assistant or a study or a thought partner. And one really great example that I saw was a science course. And I think it was a group of fourth graders learning about climate change. And prior to using School AI, the teacher had created, some common activities. They had seen videos, they had conversations, they had like an activity the students did on paper, they read something, they even did some drawing. She had some images and posters in the room. But then she had another activity where she created for the students to be able to interact and have a conversation while completing some other kind of chart. And so it wasn't giving them the answers, it was kind of coaching them along. So if they got a word like erosion, and they didn't know what that meant, they could say like, what is erosion? And it would explain them to them. And then after that, there was like layers to this. It was scaffolded. Then they went into groups and they shared out their answers. So it wasn't that they were on the devices the whole time. They were using the AI the whole time. They were being supervised, but the teacher got to move around. I got to be there, move around with them. And not all of the students in that class spoke English. So they were able to adjust it and use different, have it translate it or do whatever they wanted it to help them kind of learn along the way. So it's really neat to see it being used in all different levels, whether it's in my classroom or not. But I think the best thing is you can't hide from it. I love when people say, I have no intention of using AI. I'm like, well, you're probably already using it and the kids are using it. So we need to understand how and to support them and also learn ourselves. So it's been interesting.
Well, I'd like that you bring up about the language learners, English language learners in particular. Next week, we've got Johnny Piercy on, and
Yeah.
he talked, and we'll talk more about it then, but he talked about how he used SchoolAI to help those learners as well, for
Mhm.
them to do exactly what you said. So it's awesome to hear like that type of story in different places.
Yeah.
Like it just confirms what we hope is happening, with the ability to use these spaces. Your book, How to Teach AI, came out in 2024.
Yep.
So we are almost 2 years since that book's come out. What is the question you get the most from people? Like, have you read the book, or they're in the book and they're like, "Wait, what about this?" What do you get the most from people that engage with your book?
Yeah, so I would say that there are like two, but probably the number one question is, okay, where do I start? Is probably it.
That's what I
Um,
was going to ask. That was one of my next questions. So go dive right into that one. That's
Yeah,
perfect.
yeah, that is probably the first one. And the second one, just be, transparent. And this is something, it's not groundbreaking news. It's like, how do you write a book about something like this that is changing and keep it evergreen? And that for me was a very important thing. I have a couple books over on my right shoulder here that are my go-tos. I reach for all the time. And, the essence of it is, what is it? How do you use it? Where do you see it? What can you do with it? And so forth. And of course, you have tools and platforms are going to change. But that big question, especially if you are, in some schools, it's like, oh, we have three new platforms and these initiatives and this training. And there is a lot of overwhelm that can happen. And I've heard about it. And so I always say, think about, and I mentioned this a little bit earlier too. I'm like, before I even, if I'm presenting at a conference or doing work with a school, before I even go into the tools, and I used to always be very much, hey, here's this tool, and hey, this years ago, right? But those change. So, what are the strategies? What is the reason for using something? So, I say, get a piece of paper, make a mental note, think about things that are most time consuming, you need new ideas, anything like that, write those down. And when you have that list, then you go and somebody's like, hey, let's look at school AI. And you're like, oh my goodness, I'll just pretend, grab my little post-it notepad. And you're like, you're checking the boxes off. You're like, lesson planning? Yes. Okay, awesome. What else can I do? What else takes a lot of time? Making assessments. All right, I got assessments that I need on there. Um, translation we mentioned. Letters of recommendation is something else. So there's a lot of these like clerical administrative type tasks. IEPs is another thing. And I always recommend for educators, this is the legal part of me. It's like with anything, and you have those parameters set up within the systems that are built for educators. It's like there are the reminders about the information you're putting in. So get your list, memorize it, write it down. When you go into the platform, the more that you can check off in that one, here we go again, Nick, space, then that's where you start. And then you build, you try and you test everything out because it can be overwhelmed with so many choices. Thinking back to 2020, when so many things were available and everybody was saying to me, well, I bet this is easy for you. And I said, why would this be easy for me? They said, well, you know a lot of technology. I said, I've never taught online. I don't know the first thing. Doesn't matter how much tech you know. It's like, do you know how to use it? And then go back into the classroom. I'm like, I don't feel like I know how to teach anymore because we were so used to doing things online. You had to make that shift, what to keep and what to get rid of. So when I'm asked that question, that's the thing that I say a lot is, for on the teacher side, but also looking at the student focus side, because thinking about AI literacy, helping them to understand, what can we use and do in our classrooms that's going to help them understand what AI is, how it works, where they're seeing it in the world, how to use it, how to keep themselves safe, and all of that, and just be involved in that learning opportunity, those experiences with them, and keeping in the back of our minds that it is an extra thing, but yet it's not an extra thing because we are still going to need to create assessments and write IEPs and letters of recommendation. It's just that we're going to do those things in ways that are more streamlined and save us time that we can then convert and give back that time to our students or whoever we're working with.
I couldn't agree more. I think we forget to treat ourselves like we are supposed to treat our students, which is, yes, it's overwhelming. So you chunk it. Like it's not
Right.
like, right, like you talk about putting things down on a note card one at a time. You've chunked it.
Yeah.
And like that is a classic strategy for kids that feel overwhelmed with a project, something big, right? Like I chunk things for myself all of the time now. Like everything is broken down. Like when the product has something new in it, or when we released our browser extension, I was like, okay, I got to learn our browser extension. And if I tried to look at it as all of the browser extension all at once, I would be paralyzed with, I don't know where to start. But if I said, hey, let's just go over here and create a space on the Pathfinder Mars lander from NASA.gov. I know how to do that. Click, click, click. Oh,
Right.
okay. Oh, now I can build a lesson plan with that. Like you take it with those chunks. So I think you're
Mhm.
100% right with that. And that's true for any platform,
Yeah.
right? Whether it's school AI or something else that you've learned over the years, just to say, I want to do one little piece and then do a piece that's meaningful to you,
Hmm.
right? Do a piece for a lesson plan that you wanted to build. Do a piece because it will save you time. And I always think it's funny, and I've seen a lot of presentations from a lot of different companies over the years, and the ones that talk about time saving, they very often say things like, "Oh, you'll have so much more time for you to do grading, so much more time for you to do." And I'm like, that's the worst reason for me to save time. I'm like, I don't want to do more work. I
Right.
go, what I say is like, if you're using our platform, you're going to use School AI. That gives you time to curl up on the couch with your favorite drink and your favorite podcast, or binge watch whatever show that you want. Like that's the time I want to give back to teachers, the me
Hmm.
time, the family time. I think, this idea that you're going to save time so you can do more work is a terrible proposition. Like,
Right.
I want to give you time back for you and your family. And when I started leveraging School AI, I did for like my classes was the same thing. Like, I would normally have to spend multiple hours fine tuning this lesson to be the thing that I wanted. Or, oh, rubrics. Oh my goodness. For any of us here that have taught ELA in particular or used rubrics, writing rubrics into those little boxes on a Microsoft document or a Google, like the hours of
Right.
wasted time for formatting, right? Look, what we're
Yeah.
talking about, formatting. And now with School AI, I can say, this is how I like my rubrics. Here's the information, spit it
Mhm.
out for me. And now I tweak it. So, right,
Right.
I'm still owning the elements by changing a little bit. That's easily saved me hours over the course of
Hmm.
one school year. And what did I do? I was able just to relax with my kid, help him with his homework, hang out with my wife. Like, right, like
Yeah.
those things matter because now I'm going to be a better teacher because I'm able to decompress and go back to school the next day refreshed because that extra hour I saved, I got to like just hang out with my family. And
Yeah.
those things matter. And so I think
Right.
that's something that we pointed out. It really struck with me. It's like, yeah, it does do that, doesn't it? Like it's so nice to chunk it, to embrace it, and then move on to the next thing. And I think as long as we continue to scaffold our journey of tech use for all of us, I go, we'll be fine. No one's
Hmm.
expecting anyone to be an AI expert. We're just
Right.
expecting you to leverage the tools to make your life easier. And these are ones that we see that really stand out. So it just really, really connects to that answer a whole bunch. We got one last question. And if you have a
Okay.
question, um, as the attendees, please put that into the chat now. So I'll ask this question, and then we'll go through any of the questions that are in the chat that you have. But this last question I have for you
Okay.
is this. Your main areas of focus have been AI and the law and cybersecurity. Why is cybersecurity the next big conversation? Like, why and how, as again, I was a high school English teacher. Why the heck do I need to be worried about cybersecurity?
Yeah, well, I will say that that is something that I had been teaching about years ago in my STEAM course because it was like all the topics, AI, augmented virtual reality, digital citizenship was a big one from the beginning of the year. But about, I guess, 3 years ago now, I think it was, my school had a ransomware attack. And I had never seen anything like that. And it was really, it's very scary and cryptic. And I lost so many files. And I started to do some research on it. And so, uh, in, let's see here, I'm trying to think, I do a lot of reading, but I know just a few days ago, even, there was a report that came out talking about like the number one target really when it comes to cybersecurity attacks are school districts because of all of the information that is available within their systems. I mean, you think about all of the years that school that kids are in school, you have the staff, everybody that's involved in the school system, and all of that information, family names, social security, birth dates, addresses, the list goes on and on. And so districts are more concerned about it because of the capabilities of AI now being involved in these cybersecurity attacks. And I think there was a statistic that I read the other day that said like on average, and this is actually probably about a month ago now I read this, that the US Department of Education had this statistic that school districts face roughly an average of 5 cyber attacks per week, which could be, like your phishing scam. And we've all gotten depending on where you live, you didn't pay your tolls or whatever it is, don't click. And so schools really have to up their game because things are becoming really convincing. And I even fell for one in my own school because it was like, you need to update your password because we're doing multi-factor authentication. So click here to change your password. So I did the click because it looked legit. And it was like I had to go to cybersecurity school to learn how to not click on something. And with everything that's happening, especially like I did a session, I think it was FETC this year, and it was on cybersecurity. And primarily, I've done the session for educators, but the majority of the room were people who were the IT department or they were part of the IT department. And I remember some of them saying like, all it takes is that one teacher, that one student to just click on that link and boom, everything kind of just, that's it. And so we need to think about it because there are, with all of these extra tools that have AI, it's increasing all of the possibilities that are out there. So we have the phishing scams. Uh, you can, have access to the data. People are making these deep fakes using generative AI. And so it's, AI can be used in a good way, but it can also be in a way that's not so great. And so cybersecurity is pulled in because using these different platforms, we're putting in potentially student information or students are logging in and giving access to their information. And so we need to make sure that we know what is being shared and make sure that our systems are secure so that we aren't compromising student information, family information, anybody who's in the school system. And so I think, it has to be part of the conversation and it shouldn't be that it's just on the IT department. Like everybody needs to be mindful of it, especially as the technology continues to advance. And if anybody's interested, set a Google alert for your Gmail, cybersecurity attacks in education, because there is news every single day. And it's important that schools provide guidance for everybody and extend that to the school community, to the families as well, because the numbers are increasing, and in some cases, the information that is gained from a cyber attack or ransomware, phishing scams can even go back like 8 years worth of records. And so you have to think about it because it's not going away, I don't think.
Wow, that's wow.
Yeah.
David shared that they talked in a meeting where one teacher was getting attacks from 7 states and 2 European countries in the span of 30 minutes.
Yeah.
And that is terrifying. And like I said, when you look at some of these districts where it is a one man IT team, right?
Hmm.
That is terrifying because, yeah, going after LA Unified or New York Public is
Right.
going to be difficult. But
Yeah.
going after Smithtown, New Jersey, population of like 1,500, that could be 1,500, social security numbers that are easier to get, right? Like
Hmm.
it is terrifying. I think it's one of those next levels of things that we didn't know that we needed to know. And for those of us in those positions, it's an
Yeah.
opportunity to learn and grow. And for administrators in particular, to start planning, for
Right.
those things. We had one question, and so we can end on this question, which is a great question. It's super relevant. My question from, let's see, Stephanie says, my question stems from your praise of technology improving accessibility. I fear that schools removing devices from classrooms is going in the wrong direction. What are your thoughts about that?
That is a fantastic question because um, there I'm trying to think if it's well, LA USD came out with the news about no devices for the I think K through 2. Some other states are doing the same thing, removing the devices, and it was even on the news earlier today, and I don't watch the news that much. I just happened to overhear, screen time and devices. And so I think, that is a concern because the accessibility component of it. And so it's people talk about balance, and I don't know that you can ever truly really find balance. I think it's about setting boundaries. And in the work that I've done this year with these different schools, each school has had a task force comprised of different educators from different roles, even some students. I've also had an opportunity to sit down and speak with students about the use of technology. And they are very blunt and very honest, but that's what we need to hear. And so thinking about, how are we using it? And is a student using it because they need to enlarge the font on a book that they're reading? Or are they using it we had students come into my school a couple of years ago that spoke like Farsi and Russian, and nobody spoke those languages, and so to be able to communicate, and Swahili was another one. They needed the devices to be able to communicate, to have that translation to speak to text or speech to text, and so thinking about how to use them. One example is students that were on this panel that I spoke to said, when we were in fifth grade, when the teacher said, open the Chromebooks, we were like, yay. Now that we're juniors, and it's like everything is just open this, be on the device, it's not having us do anything. And so really thinking about goes back to I could pull the book over here. I got the, start with the why. Like, why are we using this? Is it enhancing? People are talking more about, the SAMR model. How are we leveraging that technology to enhance the students' learning? And do we actually need it? And so I think this is a conversation. I feel like it's been a roller coaster in education, quite honestly, because it's like 2020, oh no, what do we do? And we kind of like, okay, we can do this. We're all right. And then like November 22, like, oh no, ChatGPT, like, all right, we can do this. And all of these other things happen and more issues. And now, like beginning of the school year, it was cell phone use. And people were saying, oh, kids are socializing. It's great. But then trailed off and the drama was coming into schools. And so then it's screen time, and then it's the devices and not sending them home. And so uh, I think, in some cases, some of the schools, they leave it up to the teacher. But it's also, I think, just in our own respect, our own practice, thinking about, are we using this just for us to not have to actually talk to students? And I mean, I will say years ago, I was like, "Oh, what am I going to do for the full 42 minutes? Okay, I have a 6-minute video. Okay, great. Because I didn't have the skill set yet to create something interesting. And I also didn't understand the purposeful use of technology. So I think it's pulling all those things together and seeing what the reason is, but also knowing that there are skills that students need. And on that 2030 list, the top 3 involve technology and technological literacy. So they have to learn how to use it somewhere, but they also have to learn how to put it away, just like we do. So if I'm sitting here and like Nick's asked me questions, be like, I'm sorry, Nick, let me just let me just write this. No, putting it away and modeling it for students. But I've been writing a series on LinkedIn about what I've learned leading forward in AI. I think I'm just going to write the last part for next week. But it starts with leadership. It's a conversation, but it's a conversation that involves everybody in the school, and that includes students to find out how they're using it, what they want from it, what they need from it. Because some of the kids, the fifth graders said, yeah, just because I have a phone doesn't mean I know how to use it. Teachers say open up a page, and then the equity piece of it, if you have four fourth graders, three of which are using technology and one that doesn't, when they go to the next grade level and they're mixed, some of those kids, they're like, I had a kid tell me, he's like, they said go to Google Classroom. They're like, I didn't know what that was. I had never had that experience. So we want to make sure that everybody has opportunities to learn about technology, and it's up to us to decide when and how to use it that makes the most sense for students. And I will stop there. I'm sorry.
I know this is a whole other webinar. I think so many of us would sign up for because I'll just say yes, and the pendulum swings, and now we're on the side of the clock of the extreme, and then we're going to swing back. You talked about balance, and Matt Miller, who will be in 2 weeks from today, if you want to sign up for that one, talked about. I just saw this video. I think it was on LinkedIn, maybe, where he's like, people talk about balance. It's not a teacher sitting there going, "Oh, I use technology for 4 minutes, and now they're writing on paper for 4 minutes, and
Mhm.
now here's like." It doesn't exist. That's not a real thing. You're using the
Right.
tool that makes sense for the moment that you're
Mhm.
in. And you talk about that, and some students are going to need their device for accessibility reasons, and another student will not. And
Right.
that's okay. And for me, as an advocate for UDL,
Mhm.
finding ways to allow access for everyone because it helps everyone is good for everyone. And teaching them how, like you said, to use the device for learning, that's the goal. The biggest failure is not the devices, it's the
Mhm.
lack of professional development to support teachers in using these the best way possible. I have
Right.
seen it all across the country. It's
Mhm.
not the device, it's
Mhm.
the lack of preparation and how to use it. Like, I don't even think that's a hot take, but some people will say it's a hot take. But that's where we see a lot of these issues across the board. So, um, Rachelle, thank you so much for taking the
Yeah.
time. I mean, oh my goodness, like so we could have gone on and on and on and on and on and on. All it does is just prove that we just got to get you back on again and again and again and again. So
Thank you.
thank you to everyone that showed up to the conversation. We really, really appreciate it. David, Stephanie, thank you for the question. I think these are all really powerful topics that could never just be covered in a short event like this, which is
Right.
why it's important to go out and find more information to do those readings. Rochelle, where can people find you on the interwebs if they wanted to find your books, your stuff like that? Where can they find you?
Yeah, well, I'm pretty consistent. I'll drop one in the chat, but it's pretty much RDENE915. So that's, on the social medias, put the www and the .com behind it. You want to send me an email, just add the Gmail to the end of that because it's my first initial, my middle name, and my birthday because that goes back to the good old AOL days of creating email accounts. So, yeah, thank you, Nick, for this opportunity at School AI. It's definitely been great conversation, and I'm looking forward to the others in this series as well. I can't wait to hear the conversations there, and I'll probably see some of the people that joined in tonight then as well.
That's great. Yes, we do have a booth at ISTE. We are booth 2714. So if you're going to swing by the booth there, you can stop by. Rachelle has sessions at ISTE as well. So you can definitely go and find her in the ISTE program and see her there. We've got Donnie Piercy next week, June 9th, which is also my birthday. If you want to come and just
Yay.
celebrate my birthday, you can come and do that. Or come and listen just to Donnie talk about AI in the elementary classroom, which is also super helpful. And then we have Matt Miller the week after that, and then we have the Merrills the week after that. So we're all gonna explore AI in a lot of different ways. So Rachelle, thank you so much for your time. What's her email again? Her email, they want your email, uh, is rdene915 at gmail.com. Is that correct?
Yes, and that's why I'm often called Renee.
Yeah. People aren't paying attention to
It's
it.
okay. It's a mix up.
Uh,
I
and
like
then
it.
there he is, Monique. She dropped it back into the chat for you there. So please reach out. I am Nicholas Provenzano. I am the Senior Manager of Champions and Advocate Program. You can find me on the interwebs at The Nerdy Teacher. And you can reach out to me, Nicholas at schoolai.com. I will drop that into the chat as well for everyone that wants it. If you have questions about any of the School AI things, please feel free to reach out. Rachelle, thank you so very much. Have a great rest of your evening. Some
Yeah,
of you
you
are up
too.
super late already in Thailand, and some of you are still a little bit earlier on the West Coast, but we appreciate all of you taking the time. Have a wonderful evening. Great luck at the end of your school year, and I hope to see all of you next week. Goodbye,
Thanks,
everyone.
Nick.
Thank you.